Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. And I guess I should start by telling you that don't know who I am. It's no big deal, but I'm a broadcaster, and I work for CFRB. I work for Sun TV, and I guess in a sense, without sounding too cornball, I'm living my dream. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. And that's important in life, is to know what you want to be and then go get it. But I had a lot of problems along the way. Problems that landed me in trouble, landed me in jail. Problems that got so bad that I became depressed, and a lot of esteem issues. I guess I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in Detroit. Anybody ever been to Detroit? You got back alive. That's good. Now, you know, Jane-Finch is a tough area, and they have a somewhat, how would I say it, a stereotype, like this is a bad place, but it's not. There's a lot of great people up here doing things. Melbourne, my kids grew up in Melbourne. We were there when we could see the deer and the antelope. I mean, it was, and then it got bad. But I grew up in Detroit, where they averaged 700 murders a year. The year I left Detroit was 1967 for good. They had 782 murders in 1 year. I lost 2 first cousins. My brother was shot. I was stabbed. I identified my first body at 15 years old, and he was my best friend. And he was murdered. This wasn't a gang member. He was just a guy that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gang retaliation, and he never got to live past 15. I know I've met mothers up here. I've been to funerals. Unfortunately, lately, more funerals than graduations of young men that have died, shot or stabbed. I was about 10 years old, and I was at the Fox Theater in Detroit. And that's the first time that being a broadcaster ever come across my mind. I was taken there. The Fox Theater, by the way, is an icon. It's like the Apollo Theater in New York. The Fox Theater, anybody has been to the Fox Theater, they all play it. I mean, Marvin Gaye played there, Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, The Temptations. I saw Beyonce there 2 years ago. That's right, man. When Beyonce sings, I listen. With both eyeballs. But she can sing. She got it all. That's Jay-Z. Anyway. But I'm at the Fox Theater one night, and I'm with my cousin brought me. My cousin's name was Sonny. Sonny was 16. Sonny was my hero. Everybody got a hero coming up when you're a kid. Sonny was my mother's sister's son, so he's my very first cousin. Sonny was cool. He was tall and handsome. Sonny could strut. Boy, he'd be stepping, man, wherever he went. And the honeys loved Sonny, because Sonny got clean. He was cleaner than the Board of Health. 24/7. We used to wear pants up to here then. That's what we did. The brothers wore their pants up to here, and you'd have your shirt on. You'd have you'd have it open, showing your chest. You know, showing the hairs on your chest. And Sonny would strut, man. A little strutting his butt, a little chopped out, he would walk, a little lag and stride. Not like they do today. How them boys strut today? Pants all down to here. That's why they get caught today. How can you run from the cop? Talk to me, boy. You know, my son does that all the time. That's cool. That's the dress back there. Sonny took me to the Fox Theater with a bunch of other guys. I didn't even know then they were a gang. Went on to be one of the biggest gangs in Detroit. The Motor City Monsters ran the whole southeast side of Detroit. Hot goods, prostitution, loan sharking, bootlegging, numbers running. They ran it all. I didn't know that. I was 10 years old. All I know is my cousin could afford to take me to the Fox Theater. And at the time, there was this white disc jockey whose name was Alan Freed. Now, most of you probably never heard of Alan Freed, but if you go to the website tonight, look up the name Alan Freed. Alan Freed has has a powerful place in black music, getting it into the mainstream. He's a white disc jockey from Cleveland, Ohio. And he ran a show out of New York on WABC. And it went coast to coast like buttered toast every night. And blacks and Latinos, and whites listened to him. Because he brought black music into mainstream America. Before that, we hadn't heard of Little Richard or Fats Domino. Those are the big names back then on the black charts. They didn't even call them black music. Then it was called race music. And it never got mainstream, but he changed that. That's why I respect this man. I spoke in Detroit about a month ago. I spoke in Newark, New Jersey, St. Louis. And every time I tell, especially a predominantly black crowd, I say, yeah, my man was Alan Freed. They look at me like, Alan Freed? Because he's a white dude. But the fact is, this guy, when he walked on that, when I heard those loudspeakers on the huge stage at the Fox Theater, you heard the booming voice come through. Ladies and gentlemen, our host for tonight, Mr. Alan Freed. And the crowd just exploded. What's up, my man? You all right? Do it, man. What's your name? Huh? I like that name, Tommy. It's like a movie name, Tommy. So I'm in the Fox Theater, and this guy comes out on stage, and he waves to all these kids, and the balconies were full of them. And I said, man, Alan Freed. And he introduced Little Richard. Little Richard was hot then. He introduced Chuck Berry. And then he introduced a guy named Buddy Holly. I was 10 years old. I said, I'm going to be like this guy. He hangs around all these big names. It'd be like today hanging around with 50 Cent and all those guys. You know what I mean? Hanging around with Alicia Keys. I mean, you can hang around with all these rappers and rock stars, man. This is what this guy was doing back then. So I'm hopped up, man, on the way home. First time I ever shared this dream. Like I say, I'm 10 years old. I'm with Sonny, my cousin Sonny, and there's other guys. They all had nicknames, too. One guy's name was Greasy. You know why they called him Greasy? He used to take his hair and slick it back with black kiwi shoe polish. All back like this here. Looked slick. Till he started dancing. Greasy used to dance, and he'd just be working. They'd get to sweating. And that black shoe polish would drip down. He looked like a zebra pretty soon. Greasy! Then there was Ducky. Ducky was a bad little doobie. He called him Ducky because he always... duck going like a damn duck, man, excuse me. But Ducky was funny. We got on the way home. I said, hey, man, you know what I'm going to be? I'm going to be a broadcaster. Cats all stopped and looked at me. And my cousin said, man, you talk like a fool. You know black people in radio? Well, there wasn't back then. Made me stop and think. So all the way home they laughed at it. Using the N-word, as they usually did. He's going to be a disc jockey. He's going to be in radio. You crazy? He was right. There was none of us back then. I got home. There's my mama. My mama was about 4'10". My mother was born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. When I was little one, she had big Popeye arms. You know why? Because she did all the washing, and then she'd wring it dry. Just like she'd wring our net when we got out of line. My mother she'd wring it dry, she'd wash it on the scrub board, so she had these big, powerful arms. And my mama was an extremely religious woman. When I came in, she was humming. She always singing the old Rugged Cross or Amazing Grace or songs like that, you know, gospel songs. And I said, Mama, I'm really excited. I said, Mama, I'm going to be a radio disc jockey. I said, Alan Freed, Mama, he's good. Hey, that's okay, boy, you know. It's nice to think about those things, but you know, colored folks. My mother would never got into the word black. She'd call them colored folks. Ain't no colored folks in radio. She couldn't say radio, she said radio. So when you hear them kind of things at home, my mother and father were restricted. Their dreams were restricted by the times they lived in. Back then, there were no blacks in radio. And there were very few blacks on TV, and the ones that were on TV, they were stereotyped as to be like Rochester, out of Jack Benny, or Stymie out of the Little Rascals, Little Rascals type of thing. So you hear enough of that, and you begin to think, yeah, she's right. I guess I can never be a radio disc jockey. So that dream sort of stayed suppressed in me for years. wanted to be it. And you know, it's a tough thing. Dreams don't die easy. When you want to be something, when it's in your heart, it's in your soul, it's in your sight. I always wanted to be. I used to go home. You know, they used to have the old, you had them old 45s back then. Some of the older guys will know. Money, the old 45s, I'd put them on, and then I would bring them in and I'd talk over top of them. Hey, 25 minutes after the hour here on a beautiful night in Detroit, or so-and-so, the lovable one, Spider Jones, coming at you. Hey, let's get a little bit of Teddy Pendergrass in on us. You know, boom, just talking it up, man. Practicing all the time. I used to go to dances and do it. But you know what? Back then, the vision of being in radio, I just didn't believe it would happen. I didn't have people around me supporting me and telling me it can happen if you work hard. I didn't know back when I was 15, 16, somebody would ever told me, you're going to interview some of the biggest names in the entertainment world. I would say, you crazy, man. But I did, eventually. And I'll share that with you, how I got there. But if somebody, I go to schools and talk to kids every day, and when I tell them that I've interviewed their heroes, they can't believe it. I've interviewed Michael Jordan. I've interviewed Mike Tyson twice. I interviewed Mike Tyson the night before he fought Evander Holyfield. That was the second fight. Remember when Mike got hungry? And Evander's here for lunch? I interviewed him then. There's a great story of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, when you talk about potential, he was the youngest man to win the heavyweight title. He was 20 years old. But that doesn't mean he reached his potential. He had a phenomenal potential. He could have been a champion for 10 years. He could have made $300 million in a ring, easy. Today he's fighting for chump change, fighting 4-rounders because he made, and everyone you should understand this, he made bad choices. He's a man. He can't blame anybody. You can play the blame game. We all do. One time or other. When you live in the projects, growing up in Detroit, my mother and father and everybody else blamed society. And in many ways, they had a right to blame society for being kept down. But you know what? You can't live off that. You got to find a way up. Mike Tyson, by the time he reached his prime, he was finished. At 27 years old, he no longer had it. He made bad choices. He hung around with people that were thugs and hoodlums and drunks and got high. He's an athlete. An athlete cannot afford to do that. Your body is your temple. It's how you make your living, your skills. And when you erode your skills by staying and drinking a lot, his friends drank with him and partied with him. Mike was a way for them to get the babes and to get money, and Mike took that entourage with him. Now none of them are around him. You talk to him now, he would tell you. He doesn't blame anybody. I admire that. He doesn't blame nobody anymore. He says, hey, look, man, I mean, the thing, you know. He doesn't. That's how he talks. First time I met him, I couldn't believe him. The guy had the largest neck in the history of boxing. 20-inch neck. Hey, man, how you doing? I liked him personally, but that's potential. He never reached it. He didn't have enough faith in himself. He had to have people around him telling him how great he was all the time. You can't don't wait for other people to tell you how great you are. Man, hey, that's a sign of low esteem when you've got to ask other people to slap your back and to tell you how good you are. So, I met Michael Jordan. I met Michael Jordan 3 times in 1994, 95, and 96. I was the all-night man at the Fan 590. And I went coast to coast, and I was the first black man to go coast to coast in Canada on the WIC radio network every night. Not bad for a kid out of Detroit who went to bed. That's right. I invented the first water bed. I went to bed. I was in grade 3. They failed me twice. They don't fail you today. They'll put you in grade 5 when you're not ready. They'll put you in grade 8 when you're not ready. They'll put you in grade 10 when you're not ready. So by the time you get out of high school, you were lost. Because they shove you through like a manufacturing line at Ford Motors. That's not the way to do it. 2 years I spent in grade 3, and then they put me in a remedial class. Didn't get no help. Didn't get no help. Put me in a remedial class and left me there until I was 15. Taught me how to make wooden ashtrays and leather wallets, the kind I made in jail. You get me ready for jail there. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know. I was a slow learner. I knew that. I have a learning disability to this day. I have to read something. Before I flick on the mic at CFRB, I may look at the newspaper and read an interesting article. Like the reverse onus on guns, or I may read an article on how Prime Minister Harper has now suggested that Quebec be a nation within a nation. And I have to read this 2 or 3 or 4 times before I can really get a grasp of it. It doesn't make me stupid. There are people in this room that don't learn at the same pace as others. They learn at their own pace. Don't feel guilty about that. I did because people told me it was stupid. So I finally gave up. Not knowing, giving up on yourself, what's going to happen down the road? What's going to happen when you go into that corporate jungle, and that's what it is? Let me ask you this. If I take a lion, a ferocious beast, a lion, a tiger, a leopard, I take it out of the jungle, and I take its claws and take them off, take its fangs out, put it back into that jungle, how long is it going to last? Not very long. That's how many young people are going out into the corporate world today. Their weapon is this. They're not using it, and nobody's taught them how to use it. You've got to learn to think for yourself, motivate yourself. I didn't understand none of that stuff till I was almost 30 years old. I quit school at 15. My father actually signed me out. My father, back then, you couldn't just walk out of school. You had to be signed out if you were under 16. Now, there were no jobs back then. I don't want to say back then too far. You think I'm Methuselah. But there weren't too many jobs back then. There was no Harvey's. There was no McDonald's, Tim Hortons. There was none of those fast food places. So, and if you're under 15, you can't drive a car. You can't work. You need a chauffeur's license. There was nothing for me. I was out into the world with nothing. Yet my father signed me out. He was just glad to get rid of me because I was trouble. I had the police kicking our door in by the time I was 12 years old. My mother and father, especially my mother, she would whip my ass black and blue. And I still go out that window at night and head into the streets. Because I wanted to hang around with my cousin Sonny. I wanted to be like Sonny. Sonny had some jingle in his pocket. He was cleaner than the Board of Health, always sharp, had beautiful women. That's what I want, man. Dreaming big dreams. Want to be a pimp? Want to be a thug? That's what I wanted to be because they drove the big cars. They had all that bling bling on, baby. You know what I mean? They had the women. I see them strutting in, man, up and down 12th Street, man. A brother, he's slicker than grease, man. He'd be strutting a lady on each shoulder. He'd be, hey, baby. Roll out that Philadelphia bank roll, man. You know what I mean? Peel off just like it was. This is what I wanted, man. See, I was fantasizing. So I quit school and got involved with my cousin Sonny. By the time I was 16, full-fledged member. Being Nguyen. Broke in my first home at 13. They call it house cleaning. We do a little house cleaning. And we'd steal other people's stuff. Somebody broke in my home about 15 years ago. Then I really got a sense of how it felt to have something that you worked so hard for. My mother's ring. My grandmother's things that were very dear to me, stolen. And that, you know, it's terrible. Stole a lot of things that meant something to me. But I didn't realize it back then. I was just mad and angry. Angry at the world, and some of us have a right to be angry. But you know what? Bitterness constipates your creative juices. You can't think right when you're angry all the time. I was in jail, juvie hall at 15, 16, juvie hall, 19 years old, federal state prison, with rapists, drug dealers, gangsters, and it was tough. I was a big kid, and I learned how to fight in there. I learned how to fight before I got there. And you had to, because people would take advantage of you. I tell young people today, you want to go to prison, you just think you do. Bubba's there waiting for you. No, I'm serious. That's true. Him and all them butt bandits, they're waiting on you. You don't want that. Prison's not a good place. You don't see, you know, we have this certain sense we get from the media. They hype all this stuff up, like gang life is romantic. No, it's not. Many of you know it's not. I bet you many here know someone that has lost a member of their family. You see them mothers crying and them fathers. I have a man, his son was the 49th murder of the city last year. He calls me or emails me once or twice a month. His name is Clifford Huxtable. And his son was just a young man, 17 years old, getting ready to go to college. Picked up his girl one day, a girl that he met, and he died doing it. They shot him, and there's no remorse. I listen to people like that, man. It's painful. I'll jump in. I got out of Millbrook. That's the last bit I did in 1966. I moved from there, and I have this in my book, Out of the Darkness. I moved from there. You know where I lived? I lived at a gym called Sully's in Toronto. And that's where I met Muhammad Ali. Let me tell you about that. Deal I got was I got out of jail, I had $4 in my pocket and jailhouse clothes on. You could tell I was out of jail because they drove you, when they let you out of Millbrook, they'd take you up to a place near Peterborough and you'd wait for the the old GO train to come in. Or whatever they called it then. I don't know, GO train was another, anyway, some type of transportation. And I was standing there in this old Humphrey Bogart coat that the Salvation Army provided with me, the suit twice too big. So everybody knew who I was, another one of them ex-cons. I came into Toronto a little under $4 in my pocket, no place to go. I went over to Sully's gym on Ossington. That's where George Chuvalo and Clyde Gray and all the great Canadian fighters trained. And I made a deal with him. I cut a deal. I said, you know, I will sweep the floor. I will wash the floors. I will clean out the locker room, the spittoons. If you've seen a boxing spittoon, you can't eat for 2 days. And that's my job. And I slept on a brown sofa, old leather sofa. And our job was watching people come in and clean up after them. And then I'd do a little training myself. Well, in 1966, I had the honor of meeting Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was supposed to fight in Montreal. It didn't happen because they somehow stopped that fight. He wasn't allowed to fight in the States at all. He was exiled because he didn't believe in America's involvement in Vietnam. And back then, he took the blunt for it because most people were scared to speak up. Just to say, when they first invaded Iraq, most of the media wouldn't speak up. They were frightened to death. Now, I was on CFRB on a Sunday night that they invaded Iraq, and I said, this is a bad move. Now, I don't want to get political, but to me, I wasn't scared to speak up. It's a bad move, whether I lose my job or not, because my station is right-wing as hell, except for one guy, John Moore. He's the only guy that's not right-wing. He's liberal, and he's fair. The rest of them are not. They're all right-wing, so they believe that if their leader tells you to go to war and give up your life, you're going to do it to protect our investment. They don't mean you're anybody's investment in this room. They're talking about the rich man's investment. Send out, I don't see any of those people of influence, those elitists. I don't see their sons dying or their daughters dying over in Iraq. No, it ain't. It's poor folks because they got no other choice. I'm not knocking the soldiers because they're brave. It takes a lot of guts to do that, but the system stinks. But I brought that up on my radio station, knowing that my boss is right-wing. They may say, we got to go, but you don't go. They're going to leave me alone because I got a rating, because I got a solid rating, and besides, they want a person of color there, so they might as well have somebody of color that can draw listeners. I know you got to know the game, folks. You got to know the game. When I got out of jail at 26, man, I had no direction, and I'll tell you what. If you don't have a goal, you got no direction at all. Don't tell me you got a direction. If you got to have goals to have direction, little goals. That's what built me up. When I first come out of Millbrook, man, I stayed there. I learned a lot from Muhammad. I remember the day he walked in the gym, pretty as he could be. I looked at him, that face, man, smoother than a baby's bum. Here's a champion of the world, not a mark on him. 6'3". He was about 208 pounds. That was big then, not today. These guys now, man. Valianov, this guy they got from Russia, Guy's 320 pounds, 6'6". Lennox Lewis was 6'5". I was with him last week. Shoot, man. Lennox Lewis swing, and even if he misses you, you get pneumonia from the breeze. These are big guys. Man. There's Muhammad. And I came in, as I say in the book, and there was a guy on the door who was a member of the Fruit of Islam. These were muscle for the black what do you call them then, the black Muslims. And he's standing on the door. Man, I'm living in the gym, and this guy got his little dark uniform on, his little hat. He's like this. I go to walk, and he says, "No, babe, you got to pay $2." I said, "Say what?" He said, $2. I said, "For what?" "To get in and see Muhammad work out." I said, "I live there." He said, "Don't matter." So we almost got into it, and I sort of got him aside, and I went in, and Muhammad was in the back room, and he was talking to the press. You could even hear him through the dressing room door. He was loud. "This guy named George Chuvalo, man," he said, "I'm a champion. I've been down 3 times. George Chuvalo ain't never been down, but today he's gonna go down," and all that. He was talking. It was funny. He was just playing up the media. So he come out, and I remember when he come out right away. He come out in a pair of red sweat trunks, white shoes, and no top on. And the guy was cut, man. He was just, you see, he's just an athlete, the way he walked and everything. And I've been talking to Angelo Dundee, who was his trainer. There's a positive man. See, Angelo Dundee. This guy never boxed in his life, but he became a great trainer because he studied the boxers and he watched them. I mean, he trained Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard. And he brought him, and Sugar Ray Leonard could fight. Ali was a great fighter. And I was talking to Dundee, and Dundee was fascinated that I knew so much about him. See, when you love something, you excel at it. If you don't love it, you're never going to excel. A lot of people go into a career because they want money. They want money. We all want to get rich, man. Man, I'm broker than Humpty Dumpty after he fell off the wall. Maybe I ain't that broke, but I'm not far from it. But but I live a gratifying life. This is gratifying. You know the joy I get standing up here in front of people, talking, man. I can talk. I get paid to talk. What can you do better than that? So here's this pretty man. And he came up, we shook hands, and Ali challenged me right there. She said, "Tell me you bad, man." I said, "Yeah, I said, I'm a pretty good fighter. You with me?" I said, "I think I can get you." He said, "Come on, get some." And he's all like this, and I went after him, he ran. And he's just joking around, that's the way he was. But I got to know him. I was with him for 2 weeks, just that particular time. One night in the gym, and the gym was jam-packed. Remember, this was 4 or 5 days before he used to fight George Chuvalo at Maple Leaf Gardens. One day in the gym, everybody's training, and then the other time everybody stops. But I'd stop. I was working on the bags. Boom, 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 boom. Just all this stuff, And the other time, so I stopped. Ali had been sparring with a friend of mine by the name of Travis Snuffin. And I'm looking over. Now I've been hanging with them every night because they stayed at the Seaway Motel out on Lake Shore. And actually, here's what Ali did. When he heard I was living at the gym, the night that I went back with him that night, I stayed in the Seaway for 12 nights, and they paid for the whole thing. He's a very generous man. And I got to know him. You know what his favorite song was? Still is. "Stand By Me," Benny King. Loves that song. You remember that song? "When the night," That's his favorite song. He'd get in the car, he'd say, "Sing it, man, do it." We'd start doing it. He actually recorded it. But I learned a lot from Ali. Here's a guy. When he fought Sonny Liston, he was an 8-1 underdog. The critics, and that's what a lot of people, they listen to their critics, and it takes away from them. Their critics told him he would never win. When he fought George Foreman, some of you remember the George Foreman fight. George Foreman, Ali was an 8-1 underdog. He had about as much chance of beating George Foreman as an ice cube had of surviving in a politician's mouth. Not very much. Ali did it. Ali built confidence. I asked him how he was confident. He said, "Well, I did everything I was going to do. I won a gold medal. I won the heavyweight title." He's confident. You know why? because he set his goals when he was 12 years old. He started setting goals. A guy named Joe Martin, a boxing trainer, taught him how to set goals. And Allie began to achieve little goals. And no matter what little goals you achieve, they build up your confidence. You got to start with goals, little ones, not too big at first. I learned all this when I was 30 years old. I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger. But it just took me aside and sort of mentored me a bit and helped me create some goals and then go for it instead of living everybody else's dream. I wanted to be the big-time singer. I wanted to be the big-time hustler. I was living because I saw these other guys doing that. I was so involved in that I didn't look inside to find out who I was. Examine myself and see who Spider Jones is. What are my strengths? And what am I going to do to turn them into a career? You know what helped me? I got out of jail. I worked in the gym, and then I got a job bouncing in a dive called the Drake House down in Parkdale. I mean, it's changed now. That place back then, next door was a crack house. Up top is where they had about 12 rooms, and all the hustlers did their thing in there with the Johns. And all the people most of the criminals that got out of jail and came back to Toronto stayed between there and the Gladstone. And they'd all come down into this lounge and party. And I'd be down. I started out spinning records. That was my job as a disc jockey. First night I'm there, guess what happens? A fight breaks out. The owner's name is Gino, Italian guy. Spoke in broken English. Spider, please, break up at the fight. Break up at the fight. I said, you crazy? I ain't going in there. He said, please. You can't bug me. Look, guy. So I finally climbed over, broke the fight up, and them guys just swinging. I said, come on, guys, take it. Boom, boom, boom. Ripped my shirt, man. Broke it up on back. Back over putting on music. A couple days later, another fight breaks out. Spider, please, break up at the fight. I broke up the fight, man. Guy hit me in the jaw, swinging over another guy. True story. They had a bouncer in the place. His name was Peter. Peter had pythons for arms. He was about 6'3", had that hair all back long, looked like Tarzan. But Peter wasn't a bouncer. He was a magician. Every time a fight broke out, he disappeared. That's true. So one day I said to the boss, I said to Gino, how much you pay him? He said, I pay $75 a night like I do you. I said, fire him now. I said, I'll take both jobs. So I get $150 a night now. That's good money, man, back then. Under the table. Ain't nobody know but me and my boss. But it's a scary thing. I hated the job. I wonder if anybody here's ever had a job they hated. Show me some hands. Hey, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. Going every day to a job you don't like. Man, Sunday comes, you start to panic. You're glad Friday night is over. You get out of there, you're happy. Man, Saturday, you're doing everything else. Come Sunday, early afternoon, you start to think, oh, God. Isn't it true? That's what happened to me. I hated it. Because this job was tough. People wanted to hurt me. You're a bouncer. You're some sort of authority. People threatened me. They beat my car up so bad. One night I walked out of that place, and from the rooftop, it's only 3 stories high, here's what happens. I get ready to walk out the door. I get like this, I'm talking, somebody says, I walk back, I hear a thud. Somebody threw a couch down from the roof. Now I swear, this was one of those pull-out sofas. One of my mother thought used to sleep on, one like that. Them things is heavy. It broke my neck if it would have hit me. I'd be coming home at night, clothes ripped, jaw swollen. That's how I got that scar there, stopping a straight razor. It's not a good job. But about that time, a good thing happened in my life. I met a young lady. She was 3 or 4 years younger than me, and I met her at a little nightclub downtown. And it was love at first sight. I fell in love with her. I said, oh man, I love this woman. Love at first sight. Anybody here believe in love at first sight? Hey, it happened to me. Now, my wife didn't fall in love with me at first sight. It took her about 10 minutes. Game on her, baby. I run some game on her. Sweet words. I talked to her, sweet words of peace, mortality, and promptitudes of love, man. She went on for it. Best thing ever happened to me. I do a chapter on here. Now, it's not steamy, but it will make you want to fall in love because it's a beautiful feeling. Especially new love. New love's beautiful. Yes, ma'am. But she was not used to violence. I grew up violent, so it was a way of life to me. You know, when you grow up in a culture where there's violence all around you, you become desensitized, you assimilate into it, and you become a creature of that environment. One night I took her out. My wife happened to be white, Irish Catholic, I'm black, Southern Baptist. And somebody one night called her an N-lover. And I came back to the table and she was crying, and I walked over and followed the guy downstairs because I knew she would freak out. And I can tell you, he got a good night's sleep that night. They call this sleeping pill. And I'm not a passive guy. I'm not going to stand by. I'm not Jesus. I love Jesus. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. I said, no, I don't turn the other cheek. I'm going to do what I got to do. I don't like pain. But my wife wanted me out of that place. This is where school came into it. I had no education, remember, outside of about a grade 3 level. I'm a slow learner. They say I had a learning disability. I had no confidence in myself when I come to school. Anything out there in the street, you accomplish. But man, you know what? When I was 16, I didn't believe I'd live to be 18. When I was 18, I didn't believe I'd be 21. And there are many children in this area right now, not just this area, but young people, because of the violent culture we live in, that don't believe they're going to live to be 21, so they're going to live fast and go home early. That's what they think. Because I thought that way for years. I was in Detroit. I have nephews that are gang members. 3rd and 4th generation gang members. And I've had nephews that have died. They've been shot. I have a nephew in a wheelchair now. He got it right in the spine. Got twice. You know what? He can't even wipe his own butt. Excuse my expression. So, you know what? If I'm going to go, I'm going to go. But you know what? I don't want to go like that. I got to have some nurse walk in and clean me up because I can't even move. But these kids chose that. Not all kids choose that, but a lot of them do. Gang life is a violent life. Like it or not, you become part of. You're not an individual. I know many times with us guys, there'd be some stuff coming down. I got to be there, and I didn't want to be there, but I had to be there because I was part of it. I got your back, you my boy. You know what I found out in life? No, I ain't got your back no more because you bringing it on, then you got to settle it. I got to stay away from you. So then they told me, you ain't keeping it real. Yes, I am. I'm keeping it real safe. I don't want to be in that. I just want to go and be where I want to be. One day I come home, my wife, we got married, by the way, 6 months after we began dating. Went down to City Hall. No frills wedding. $10. You hear me? My daughter got married 5 or 6 years ago. Out of my pocket alone, it was $8,000. You know what happened? She got divorced. I said, next time you get married, you go to City Hall. Because I ain't paying your way no more, coming down the aisle in that white dress and everything. I know my daughter, she wear no white dress. But she comes down the aisle, man, chipping with her husband in love, and they just, oh, you know, the whole ceremony, you know how the ceremony goes. Oh, man, you know, another kiss. You know, another kiss. Oh, they act like they're in love. Nothing else counts. You know what I mean? Oh, man. Lead off the wedding dance with Daddy. Here and now. Oh, everybody's got their spotlight, man. Oh, man, I'm telling you, that's how it was. Everybody got the spotlight. And she dances with him. A month later, man, they're trying to kill each other. I said, next time go to City Hall. Because that's where I got married. That was 32 years ago. One day I come home, my wife has these brochures on the desk. She has been out to Seneca College, Humber College. She's been to George Brown. My wife took it in her hands. She became my mentor. But you don't even be mentor if you listen. And my wife said, "You're going back to school?" And I said, "Oh, hell no. I ain't going back to school. That's the last place I want to be." School was bad to me. As a child growing up, a slow learner back then was always chastised, always put down. You have no esteem. You have no confidence in yourself. Why would I want to go back to school? See, as a kid, there were 11 of us, plus my mother and father, that lived in this 2-bedroom bungalow that my grandfather built. And I'm going to tell you right now, my grandfather was not a skilled laborer. My grandfather was a terrible carpenter. That house had more holes in it than Swiss cheese. In the winter, because there's no insulation hardly, in the winter the house would get cold. So my father would close off the back of the house at night. And the front of the house, there were 2 bedrooms. 3 or 4 of them slept in one, and the other 6 of us slept in this bedroom. And in the middle was a pull-out couch where my mother and father slept. They never once had a bedroom in all the years I was at home. And my dad would put some wood in that stove before he went to bed at night. Then he'd go to sleep. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, that fire would die out in that house, with the temperature would drop, and you'd wake up in the morning and you could see the steam rolling out of your mouth, out of your nostrils. That's how we lived. 6 of us slept in one bed, 3 at the top and 3 at the bottom. So I'd wake up in the morning many times with my sister and brother's toes in my mouth. I like grape jam, but I don't like toe jam. Hey, I'll tell you, serious as a heart attack. And them feet be sometimes funky because they've been in running shoes all day. We only had, you know what our bathtub was? A little tin tub my mother would pull out and give us a bath once or twice a week. Most of the time it was on Saturday evening to get ready for church on Sunday. She said, "Got to get clean for the Lord." Oh yeah. She'd be singing them spirituals and rubbing you with that brush, boy, till you had no skin left. That's why I was light complected. She took all the black off me. She rubbed, boy, she was tough. My mom was a little woman, I told you. But she'd be humming and holding you, and then she'd put that water, the same dirty water she washed you with, rinse your head off after, and that soap would get in your eyes, and you, "Oh, Mama, hush up, boy." Whoa, she was something. Here's when my life began to change. When I was 5 years old, my mother disappeared. She disappeared. Only for a week, though. She had a baby. Another one, come home. This little boy was something else. His name was Dennis Michael Jones. This was the most difficult part of writing the book. And I put it up for 3 years, honest. It was emotional because Dennis Michael Jones was a beautiful little baby, head full of hair, born with it. My hair's on a diet. And he had these eyes. They were big saucer brown eyes. He looked like E.T., looked like a little Martian. But he was beautiful, he had a little smile. We hit it off right away. So my mother decided to put Dennis's crib next to our bed. And I slept at the edge of the bed. So I was the first one to wake up in the morning. There was little Dennis. As he got older, he'd climb up on the rails and he would peek through them and, try to baby talk me. I'd come and get him. I loved him. We were really close. And he'd lay in bed with me. We'd play together. I even learned how to change diapers. I was 6 years old changing diapers. That's back when they had pins. Remember the pins? Sometimes I'd miss and stick him, boy. Ah! He was cute, man. I didn't mean it. When Dennis was 18 months old, he got sick. He got pneumonia. And it got bad. Now, we were living in Detroit at the time. We didn't have a health plan. So people were reluctant to rush their kids to the hospital. Because you would have to see, as bad as this guy, we got a health plan here at least. Your kids are sick, you can take them to a hospital. There are many people in Detroit that don't have health plans in the States. Well, Dennis got worse. You see, each night, my mother tried all the old-fashioned remedies. The mustard plasters they used to put on them, and Vicks in the nose, and all this other stuff. Castor oil. That stuff will kill you alone, that castor oil, man. Anybody ever had that castor oil when they were younger? They shove it down your throat. Man, shove it down your throat, don't they? Oh, it's terrible. They give you good move, but you got to go to the washroom. Eating them hamburgers, and she'd feed us. Well, Dennis really got sick, and then my mother called the doctor. We had a doctor who would make house calls. His name was Dr. Chatters. And Doctor came in, I remember him to this day, and that is so many years ago. He said to my mother after he examined my brother, he said, if he gets any worse, rush him to the hospital first thing in the morning. This boy's sick. And I remember that night my mother coming in the bedroom 2 or 3 times and administering to Dennis. And then she would make sure we were covered up. We had all these old blankets my grandmother had made. These old plaid-colored blankets. But they kept you warm. About 5:30 that morning, I was shocked out of a deep sleep by the most horrific scream I have ever heard. And when I looked up, there was my mother. I couldn't see her face. She had her back to me, but she was rocking my brother in her arms, and she was just screaming, please God, bring him back. He had died of pneumonia that night. And I saw my father come into the bedroom, and he just went berserk. He was crying and weeping and praying, and he was just, now we were young kids. I was 6.5 by this time. The doctor came in and signed a death certificate later on, and then about an hour after the doctor left, you hear a couple times on the front door. My father left the bedroom. He came back in leading this man, this elderly man. And this man, he looked like he was straight out of a horror movie. He was all dressed in black, but I noticed he was carrying a black carrying bag. And he took this bag and he placed it on the bed next to me. Now, I shouldn't have been in that room. None of us should. But you're not going to leave on your own. You're 6.5. I was 6.5 by that time. And the man reached and to take my brother's body from my mother. And my mother went berserk. Mothers love their children. A mother's love is probably the most powerful emotion there is. And when he tried to take that child's body from my mother, she went nuts. My father had to contain her. And then the man took the body. He walked over to that bag that was sitting next to me. He placed my brother's body in there and he slammed the lid down like my little brother was a rag doll. Never said anything, no words of consolation. He walked out of the room. That is the last night that I slept decently until I was pretty close to 16 years old. Nightmares. From that night on, it wasn't a night that didn't go by that I didn't have nightmares. In the nightmares, this guy would come and get me. He'd lock me in his bag, and I'd wake up screaming, and the whole house would be disrupted. He'd get mad at me. My father, after a while, he said, this is getting too much. I became so frightened of the dark, it affected all aspects of my life. I'd lay there at night, 2 or 3 in the morning. I had to go to the washroom. I had to go take a whiz, or whatever you call it. But that meant I had to get up out of that bed, ease through the living room, and you couldn't turn on the light because my mother and father were on that pull-out sofa in there. And you wake my dad up, you're in trouble. He had to get up. So I'd go through there, and I'd slip out of the kitchen, and many times that kitchen was so ice cold, especially in the winter. You had to go to the back of the kitchen, and the washroom was at the back. It was only a small washroom. I'll tell you how big it was. It was like from here to about just about this and like this here. There was nothing in it, just a toilet. No plumbing, no other plumbing. That was indoors. But to get to there, you'd have to find a light first in the kitchen, and it used to hang on a little cord. And you'd finally find it go, and the light would come on. I'm going to tell you something. There was something in that kitchen that frightened me as much as that man in my nightmares. See, we lived about a block from the Detroit River, and there was a huge dairy down there where they produced ice cream, and they had milk and all kinds of other dairy products. Now, underneath there was a network of sewers, and it ran all through the projects where we lived. And you know what bred in them sewers? Rats. Sewer rats that big, like this here, and they're vicious. Sewer rats will attack you. I had a sister and my cousin who lived with us from the time he was 8 months old were bitten by rats. So when you turn on that light went onto that kitchen, them rats would be on the table, in your cupboards, and they lived in the walls. Sometimes my dad would poison them. Leak food out from the poison. They'd go up in the walls and die, and their corpses would rot. That house, the stench was unbearable, and there's nothing you could do. Nothing. My sister Barbara was the only one to stand up to them rats. My sister Barbara was 2 years older than me. You know what she used to do? Sleep with a baseball bat under her bed. And she'd go to the washroom at night. She hit more home runs than Barry Bonds. But I wouldn't. I'd stay in that bedroom. I'd stay in that bed, and I would lay there trembling at night, trembling, frightened of the dark, frightened that man. I believed in my heart. And you got to understand, some kids, why are people scared of the dark? You got to find out why. Now, I know now there's nothing out there. It was all in here. Once you learn about that, that's like low esteem. It's in here. It's a psychological thing. It's in here. You got to go, and that's where you got to go to fight it. Once you fight it in there, you can do anything you want in life down there, within reason. But I didn't know back then that was in my mind. Man, I lay in that bed till I couldn't fight it anymore, and then I would wet the bed, soak my brothers and sisters. Then they'd kick me and call me all kinds of names. I mean, you would too. Somebody would peed all over you. This didn't happen just one night. This happened every night. Sometimes twice a night. Like I said, I invented the first water bed. One night my mother said to me, "You go to bed tonight, son, you wet the bed in the morning, I'm going to whip your bottom." I said, "Mama, that man out there going to get me." "Ain't nobody going to get me. Nobody going to get you but me," she said. Now, I could have said, "Mama, you touch me and I'll phone the Children's Aid Society." You know what my mother would have said to me? "You got to get to a phone first, boy." Well, that morning, I went to bed as usual. My mother gave me a whipping of my life. Day after day. So I used to go to bed at night, frightened of the dark, wake up in the middle of the night, wet the bed. My brothers and sisters beat the heck out of me. My mother would whip me. I said, I got to get out of this. So what I decided to do was I waited. My father used to get up, go to work, and my mother would get up and make us breakfast, and then she'd go back to bed. Get a little snooze, so that's when I'd sneak by my mother. I'd go into the bathroom in my dirty underwear, and I would get my dad's Old Spice aftershave lotion, sprinkle it on, and dabble it all over my foul underwear. Pull up my blue jeans and sneak off to school, stinking up a breeze. Hey, you know what? You can't mask stench. You can put all the perfume you want on stench, but it broadcast. I'm telling you, kids in school made fun of me, laughed at me, called me names, stinky, funky, piggy, all kinds of things. Man, you hear that stuff, you got no confidence. How are you going to beat it? I know people today that have scars from their childhood, and they can't deal with it. Just they'll never get over it and get on with their life. That stuff doesn't bother me anymore. I laugh at it now, but I know how it feels, and that's why I can relate to young people. When you're in pain, it needs to be addressed. Remember one day in grade 3, true story. Teachers walking down the aisle, and they asked each person to read a chapter to them, or read a paragraph. And they got to it, where this gentleman is, and the teacher's like, "What is that terrible smell?" Everybody in the class looked at me. And there's one guy in the back, and I got his name in here, and I can tell you his name was Red Turner. Red said, "It's Jones, he always stinks like a dog." And they had a couple of dogs in our backyard, and they stunk. It's all in the book. I talk about Red Turner. He was my boogeyman. He used to beat me up, spit on me. He had me frightened. I wouldn't even tell the teachers. For 2 reasons. Number one, fear. Because you grew up in Detroit, man. You tell. Those young people, they're like terrorists there, man. They make everybody frightened. But that's only one. Number two is, I had peer pressure. You want to try to be cool, so you don't want to rat on people. Because it ain't cool. Now you're a fake. I should have told on the guy. I didn't. Anyway, I went to bed up till I was 16, 17 years old. So I had the only place I found comfortable, one place, being in the ring. But see, that was false too, because I wasn't good enough as I thought I'd be. I thought I would be the next middleweight champion of the world. I won my first 18 fights. I thought I could be the middleweight champion of the world. I told everybody nothing else mattered. I'm going to be the champion of the world. I would be like Archie Moore, like Sugar Ray Robinson, my heroes. I didn't have enough. I didn't know it then. But I learned other aspects from it. And that's what got me involved in broadcasting. I did learn from first-hand experience how to call a fight, how to analyze a fight. I made a good living doing that, which opened doors to other areas of my life. Met a young man that wants to be a rapper, beautiful, but learn everything about the game, because that's what P. Diddy did. That's why he's so successful, Jay-Z. They don't just rap, they know the game. That's why they have their own record labels. They produce. A lot of the great entertainers produced before they even became rappers. Marvin Gaye was a drummer at one time for Martha Reeves and the Vandellos. Marvin Gaye was a drummer? I mean, this guy was a phenomenal entertainer. So for people that have careers, especially in today's industry, there's so much hype. Every kid I know wants to be a basketball player, a hockey player, a rapper, or an actor. And women too. I'm not saying don't do that. Because you had to, everybody came from somewhere. Look at Tina Turner. Tina Turner was born in dire poverty. Annie Mae Bullock. Nobody would ever believe this woman became one of the greatest entertainers of our time. She came from nothing. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Clint Eastwood's a great story. When you think, a lot of people, Clint Eastwood may be a little old today, but let me tell you something. When this guy went for his first audition, you know what everybody said? He still got the piece of paper. The guy who wrote, the producer wrote, this guy will never make it in the business. He blinks too much. He's got too big of an Adam's apple. Clint Eastwood became the #1 draw. He won as an actor, a Grammy. I mean, not a Grammy, yes, Academy Award. He also won one as a director, the oldest man to direct a movie. So, I think the first thing you have to do is believe in yourself. You really had to believe in yourself. That happened to me after I went back to school. I had to go upgrade. First day in school, I walked out. I was stopped. God, thank you. As I walked out the door, a man by the name of Doug Smith, who was no longer with us, stopped me. He said, "Where are you going, Spire?" I said, "I'm like, this isn't for me." Man, I was almost 30 years old. Everybody else in class was 20, 21, and 22. But check this out. These kids were in college prep because they had all been passed through high school and they couldn't write a paragraph. And they rushed them through. Many of these kids were bright, and many of them I still know. But they've been rushed. We're rushing our kids to school too much. We don't want to pass them because we don't want to hurt their esteem. Well, I'll tell you, the esteem really takes a hit when you get out of high school and you're not ready for college and there's nothing out there for you but some Joe job where they exploit you the rest of your life. You let them know when you're ready. You got to stand up for yourself too. I'm not ready yet. And they took all those kids and what they do? They cut grade 13. I don't think that's a good thing. These kids are going to university a year earlier, and maybe they're not quite mature. I'll make this short anyhow. I've said enough, but I went back to school and I upgraded for 18 months before I was ready to go to college. And I never thought I'd ever be a writer. Now I got a hit book out and another one coming. This book is going to be a movie. They have people as we speak that came in from... A guy read this book on a flight over from Norway to Los Angeles, 18 hours almost. He read the book and he said he was so touched by it. He tracked down ECW Press, the publisher, got in touch with me, came in 3 days later, we negotiated to write a script. He's already talked to Shamar Moore. I don't know if I want him to play me. He talked about maybe I want somebody a little better looking. Shamar is hot, man. He's hot, but he's very much interested. But I'm telling you, if anybody ever told me when I was this young man's age that these things would happen to me, I wouldn't believe him. I wouldn't believe because of the environment I grew up in. It was negative. Many of us grew up in negative environments. We got to make a positive thing on it. And you do that. Here are ways to keep you positive. Read. Go to the libraries or read great biographies. Read Oprah's. You talk about poverty. Oh, that ain't funny. I can tell you so many stories. There's a guy by the name of Benjamin. I'm trying to remember his last name, but I interviewed him a couple of years ago. He's a head neurosurgeon at the Johns Hopkins Institute. He's a black man that grew up in Detroit with a brother, single parent. His mother married a guy. His mother was 14 when she got married. This guy, she didn't know it. He had another family on the west side of Detroit. Nothing's new. That's what happens a lot. She found out that this guy had another family. She divorced him. But Benjamin, I'm trying to remember his last name, but he's very John Husk. He's the first black man to become the head neurosurgeon at that hospital. He come up in poverty, and in grade 6, he had the lowest grade in his class. The lowest grade in his class. This is a true story. His mother got involved right away. You know, she couldn't hardly write or read. She made her 2 sons go join the library. She took them down. It all starts in the home. She forced him to go down and join the library. She made him read a book a week. And then on Saturday they had to present her with a book report. Those kids got good. Within 2 years, this guy, by the time he was in grade 8, he graduated with honors. He graduated out of high school with honors and out of university, and now he's a head neurosurgeon. He's the first one to perform the separating of twins. And here's a kid that they said had a learning disability, said that he was slow. But once he started achieving things with his mother's help, small goals, you start with small goals, and things got better. And that's how I learned in school. And I'll tell you another thing, too. Find good mentors. You know what I'm saying? You listening? Good mentors.